hope you're as excited as I am for the beginning of Forerunner campaigns streaming live on Twitch and YouTube this Friday on September 21st. If you're watching us for the first time, or if you're a return viewer, you might be a little confused about the system we're using to play our games. Which makes sense, as this is a new system that's just recently come out by Green Ronin. Relatively recently. So just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, I thought I would make a little video about how to play in the Fantasy Age system. What are the rules, and what are some of the things you'll see us, what are some of the things you should be looking for as you watch us play, so that you know when we succeed and when we fail, and you're not caught off guard by one of our reactions. If you like this video, please give it a like, and comment below on some questions you might have, or just comments about the system in general. Maybe you've played the system before and you enjoy it. Tell others about it. So be sure to share this video on your social media so that others can view it too. Maybe you're thinking about using this system, or have a friend who's maybe having difficulty understanding the nuances of the game, in which case you can just show them this video and you won't have to explain it to them anymore. Hopefully. For now, let's dive into the video. To get started on understanding the system, we first need to talk about the ability scores. Your ability scores are going to be your ability to do anything, from jumping to fighting to negotiating an excellent deal. Your ability scores are going to be key to knowing exactly exactly what you can do and how successful you are doing it. If you're familiar with anything like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Starfinder, you'll be familiar with the 6 ability stat system. So you'll know things like dexterity, strength, constitution, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma. But for Fantasy Age, there are actually 9 of these abilities, not just wisdom and charisma and all the rest, but there are a few others that allow us to better focus and specialize into specific things that we're doing with our characters. These 9 abilities are accuracy, communication, constitution, dexterity, fighting, intelligence, perception, strength, and willpower. Within each one of these abilities, you have focuses. Focuses are things that you particularly are good at, and so you get a little bit of an extra buff when performing them. For example, if you have communication gambling, that means that whenever you go into, say, a casino and you try to win at a poker game, whenever you make rolls towards that poker game, you get a +2 bonus for being a gambler. Before I go further into abilities, I should make note that the Fantasy Age system is a 3d6 system. What do I mean by 3d6? Well, if you're not familiar with the lingo, it's 3 6-sided dice. They're these ones. Might have little numbers on it, but you might be more familiar with these kind of traditional Yahtzee sort of dice and things. In nearly all situations, you will only use 3d6. Now, there are occasions where you'll use a few more, but you'll never use any other dice other than D6 dice. So if you're picking up this game for the first time and you have a Yahtzee box somewhere in the house, you'll be able to play the game. Because we only use a 3d6 system, it makes things a little bit easier for calculating. There are no such things as reflex defense and will saves and other things you'll need to calculate. In anything you do, you're only going to be making an ability test. Your ability tests will only ever be between you and another player, or maybe you and an NPC, or against a set score that your dungeon master will set. So, for example, if you were to attempt to jump over a ravine, your dungeon master might decide that that's going to be a difficulty of 10. So then your dungeon master will tell you that you need to roll strength jumping, and you need to beat a DC of 10. Or if they're like me, they might keep the DC secret and just tell you to roll a strength jumping. Either way, you'll roll your 3d6. You'll add your strength score plus the +2 if you're focused in the jumping, and then if it adds up to 10, you'll have jumped the ravine, and if not, you'll likely fall down into the pit below and get eaten by the alligators that, of course, your GM made sure were there so that your character would die. Or, maybe just think twice about jumping ravines. It's important to note that focuses can be similar to skills in Dungeons & Dragons in that you have to be trained in them in order to use them. So, for example, it would be perfectly understandable if your dungeon master wants you to roll a intelligence historical lore, but you don't have historical lore, so your dungeon master says, okay, well, you can't roll for it. But also by the same token, you don't necessarily have to be focused in order to do it. You don't have to have the focus jumping in order to jump. Everyone should know how to jump unless they're, 3. Well, depending on the race, that could be pretty old. If you didn't have strength jumping, your Dungeon Master would just tell you to roll strength and add that to your dice score. Number 2, stunts. So another thing you'll notice if you watch our games is that we repeatedly asks for stunts. Indeed, if you watch our player Eagle, who is playing Vinda, you'll notice that she repeatedly is reminding our players to use their stunts. This is because with stunts, you can do things that you normally couldn't do without them, and they can be very critical in a point in battle or something else along the way. So as I mentioned, Fantasy Age is a 3d6 system, which means we roll these 3 dice. But whenever we roll doubles, like here, 2 ones, we count the other die, one that's different from the other 2, the stunt die. Stunt die calculates the stunt points you have to spend on stunts. So if you roll doubles here, or if you roll triple ones, or if you roll, 2 ones here and a 4 here, doesn't matter what combination it is. Only thing that matters is that you rolled stunts. Any combination of these dice rolling doubles will gain you stunt points. Stunt points, however, do matter to the type of die you roll. So no matter what you rolled on this, so if you rolled double ones but you rolled a 6 here, then you get 6 stunt points. If you roll triple threes and this is a 3, then you get 3 stunt points to spend. Most of the time, you'll probably hear us use stunts in combat, as like I said, for Eagle and our other players, that's the most important. Your stunt points in combat allow you to do extra things like extra damage, being able to hit another target, being able to do 2 attacks instead of 1. But you'll also probably hear us mention stunts for things like role-playing and when we're exploring out in the world. That's because stunts can be used for more than just combat. Some of those popular stunts used by my players are things like Lethal Blow and Piercing Armor. Lethal Blow is a 5 cost stunt, and it allows you to do 2d6 extra damage. See, that's where I told you, then those rare cases where you're using more than 3d. So let's say, for example, you roll a 5 and 2 3s. And the 5 is on your stunt die. Once you're done attacking, you can use those 5 stunt points to apply 2 extra d6 of damage. So if you're using a great sword and it already has 2d6 plus, 3 to the damage, instead of rolling 2d6, you'd actually be rolling 4d6, and then you'd add that plus 2 to the damage. It's like Pierce Armor only costs 2 stunt points, and they allow you to bring someone's armor rating down to half. I'll explain further more about armor rating in a minute. Regardless of what stunt you do, you can use as many stunts as you like as long as you have the points to spend them on. So let's assume I rolled a 5. No, let's go a little higher. Let's say I rolled 6 stunt points. I could use 6 stunts that cost 1 stunt point. I could use 2 stunts that cost 3 stunt points. I could use a stunt that costs 1 stunt point. I could use another stunt that costs 2 stunt points, and then I could use another stunt that costs 3 stunt points. It doesn't matter what combination you use. You can use as many stunts as you have the points for. The only real restriction is you can only use a stunt once per turn. There are a few times where you can use a stunt more than once, but it'll usually tell you if that's the case. The next type of stunts that you'll likely use in combat are called spell stunts, and these are stunts very similar to the combat stunts, but they only apply to spell users and spell casting. Another type of stunt you'll use are exploration stunts. These are stunts that allow you to do extra things when you're exploring an area, like tracking something through the forest, or maybe you're investigating a room of a murder. Stunts like That Makes Me Wonder will allow you to immediately take another perception test. So let's say you roll a perception search test, and you're looking for signs of gorilla tracks in the forest because your party is hunting for a gorilla. But let's say whoever's doing this rolls really poorly, but they rolled stunts and got a 3 on their stunt points, so they were able to use the stunt That Makes Me Wonder. This allows them to immediately make another perception check without using any more resources or time. They just simply get to do another look around, almost like they caught something out of the corner of their eye and then they focused on it a little bit more, and by looking at it they got a little more information out of it than if they had just been scoping around the premises and hadn't noticed the glint over by the tree. It's a way for the player to basically make up for maybe missing something the first time that they rolled, or maybe they said they've noticed something but they rolled kind of low and the DM had a little more information they could give them. This is a way that they can gain it. Obviously, they still need to, with a stunt like this, they still need to roll high enough to gain the more information, as they have to roll another perception check, but it is a second chance. Other stunts like Speedy Search allow for you to gather information more quickly, so something that the GM said, okay, well, this is going to take you half an hour, well, now it's cut in time, so now it takes only 15 minutes, which can be useful in some situations. And other stunts like the object of your attention just give you a bonus to investigating that particular thing. The final type of stunt that you'll use, though maybe that you'll use perhaps less often than combat or exploration stunts, depending on what game you're running, but we tend to use them quite often, are role-playing stunts. Role-playing stunts are things like sway the crowd and stun silence. They don't really do anything mechanically, as in, like, there aren't set rules to say, if you use this focus, you're guaranteed to succeed at this thing. They're more like being able to turn a situation around. So let's say you're trying to tell something serious to the king, but instead you roll poorly and he takes it as an insult. Well, if you roll doubles and you roll 3 stunt points, you could use the role-playing stunt jest. So instead of taking offense, it would turn the comment into a joke and cause him to laugh. So maybe the king still doesn't take you seriously, but at least now he doesn't want to chop off your head. There are other stunts like flirt and enrage and sway the crowd, which allow you to kind of get more out of a conversation or out of people that you normally would. Obviously, sway the crowd would be something excellent for like bards who are performing, but it could also be a stunt used if you're trying to rally troops for a final fight. Flirt is excellent in case you're wanting to, put the moves on a particular individual or NPC, but you're not quite rolling high enough. Well, you could use the stunt. You could use the flirt stunt to better your odds at wooing your intended. The best part about stunts is they don't require you to take points in anything. As long as you roll doubles, you can use your stunts on anything. You don't need special feats that will say you can take this stunt. You don't need special abilities or qualifications to use them. Classes, specializations, and maybe 1 or 2 feats will actually give you new stunts you can use that aren't on a list of stunts that everyone else has access to, but that's very rare, and you'll be notified when you gain these types of things. For the most part, all stunts can be used by anyone. It just takes the right dice and the right wit to apply it to the situation correctly. Number 7, character death. Character death in Fantasy Age is actually pretty simple, and it's easy to do if you're not paying attention. Whenever a character goes to 0 health, they're considered dying. You can't ever go below 0 health. There are no negative health numbers, so you at least don't have to keep track of that. Once you are dying, you have 2 plus your Constitution modifier of rounds before you die. So let's say if you have a Constitution of 3, that's 2 plus 3 in 5 rounds. After 5 rounds, you're dead. The only way to prevent death is for someone to come and stabilize you, either through the use of a spell or a major action or something in between. If they catch you before the final round is over, you are considered stabilized. Though it may not necessarily bring you back up to moving health, you're at least not dying. And of course, anytime you're healed to like 5 health, 10 health, whatever, you are no longer considered dying. So you make sure you pay attention to how many rounds pass so that you don't leave your fellow player dying in an alley without any aid. Number 8, spells. Now, spells are a little trickier to explain because as a group, we're used to more complex systems, and the spell system for this book just wasn't complex enough for our party. So I changed quite a few rules in order to make it more to what we were used to. So first I'll explain the normal rules, and then I'll go into a little bit about our adjusted rules just so that you can keep up with us. To begin with, magic has no spell slots. You instead have a magic pool of points. You can call it mana, I guess. These points are calculated by your willpower as well as the d6 you roll when at character creation and in each level up. It's very similar to the way health points are calculated. You can cast as many spells as you have magic points. So some spells will cost 3 magic points, in which you'll have to use 3, others will cost 5, and as long as you have enough of these points to spend, you can cast as many spells as you like. Spell trees start off with novice to journeyman to master. Each of these spell trees have 2 to 4 novice abilities depending on which books you have, 1 to 2 journeyman spells, and 1 to 2 mastery level spells. Whenever you enter a spell tree, you gain 2 novice level spells. Then whenever you level up, you gain 1 journeyman spell, and after another level, you gain 1 mastery spell. At any point, you can choose to take another talent in a different spell tree, but you'll still have to start at the beginning. Meaning that if you decide to take 1 talent in lightning, you gain 2 novice lightning spells. And then the next time you choose spells, you take a talent in novice water magic, you gain 2 novice level water magics. You only get to advance in a spell tree if you choose to take the next level of spell. There are some restrictions, such as wearing armor will add a +1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number to the normal amount of spell points, magic points you would use for casting that spell. And whenever you cast a spell, it's always 3d6 plus your intelligence modifier plus any arcana focuses you might have, which you usually gain at journeyman level. Like I said earlier, you don't have to roll above the defense in order for these to hit. You just have to roll against the set. DC of the spell itself. So if a spell requires you to roll a 16 in order for it to succeed, you have to roll a 16 or above in order for you to even cast that spell. And like I said earlier, there are stunts that specifically only applied to spell casting, stunts that reduce the amount of cost the magic points will be for using that spell, other stunts that will make that spell more effective, add more damage, that sort of thing. The main changes I made to the spellcasting rules is I added a ton more spells to each of the schools, as well as adding a few new ones. Because of the vast amount of spells, I wanted it to be a little bit more similar to a Pathfinder or D&D system, so I added spell slots. The way spell slots work for our game, if you have novice level water arcana, you gain access to all the novice level water arcana spells. But you only have 2 novice level spell slots, meaning that you have to choose 2 of your spell pool to slot in, and those 2 spells are the only ones you can use during the day. The only exception to this is taking a small rest, which will allow you to exchange one of these spells, or you go to sleep and wake up the next day, in which case you can replace both of these spells. You gain more spell slots as you go up, but it's generally the same for all the levels of Arcana. This just makes it so that my players could have more magic and things could get a little more crazy than they could before. Number 9, movement. Movement is very similar to Dungeons & Dragons. You have a number of feet you can move each round. Per 5 feet equals 1 square. How many times of 5 feet you have, you can move that square. The only real difference is there really isn't a set score for how much you can move. So for example, in D&D, a medium-sized creature can move 30 feet, which equals 6 squares. In Fantasy Age, your movement is calculated by a score given to you when you choose your race, plus your dexterity score. This is the reason why Aetheris can move a few more scores than Winter, who has a little bit of a lower speed than her. It simply means that he has a few more points in his dexterity than she does, and so even though that they're technically the same size category, he's faster and can move further. And finally, number 10, yards are equal to feet. So to connect this with movement, you will also notice if you watch our games that we've made a slight change in the measurements. Fantasy Age uses yards to measure their square, and so something that's 1 yard equals 1 square. Something that takes 3 yards equals 3 squares, and so on. But when I was playing the game and calculating things, some of the yardage, as some things could just take 30 squares. Some spells could be cast 30 squares away from them, and some guns could fire 30 squares from their position. Just crazy amount of distance on the battlefield, which would make creating maps very difficult, at least for me in my head. So the simplest change I made is I rounded everything up to the nearest 5, and I changed the square to be similar to a Dungeons & Dragons where 5 feet equals 1 square. So if you get your hands on the book and I say something like, Aetheris, you can move up to 30 feet, and you're going through the book like, he can move up to 30 feet. There's no mention of feet, it's in yards. How many yards is he actually moving? Don't worry about it. We just got rid of the yardage and translated it into feet just to make it simpler for us and anyone who is watching us. So there you go. There's my quick crash course so that you can play the game at home if you're just here for a tutorial, or you can follow along with us as we are on Twitch and YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all this Friday. Please comment below if you have any more questions that I can answer for you. If there are some rules that are tripping you up and you're not quite certain how they should be read in the book, let me know. If you don't have any questions about rules, instead, comment below about some of the things you would like to see in the stream or something you're excited about if you have seen some of our videos and things you want to know how they're going to resolve. Maybe you have a question about one of our players and why they did something. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.